When performing swabs in your area, you always want to adhere to the local GMP and safety requirements for that area. So always wear appropriate safety equipment required. Might include safety shoes, safety glasses, earplugs, and other devices. Always lock out, tag out equipment prior to swabbing if it's required. And always wear appropriate GMP attire, which could include hairnets, gloves, long sleeves, etc. There are swab supply areas at both Beaver Court and York Road. The Beaver Court supplies are located in the pass-through window outside of the pressing team room. The York Road supply area is located in the pass-through window outside of the York Road microbiology lab. If at any time the supplies are needed or not available, you can contact Melissa Corbett at extension 8678, Ellen Abid at extension 4695, or Brenda Wagner at extension 8607. Prior to swabbing, be sure to put on a new pair of gloves. Sanitize these gloves with 70% alcohol before taking your first sample. Throughout the swabbing process, those gloves can be used the entire time, however, that they should be re-sanitized as you see necessary. Before performing swabs, you should know that the following materials would be needed: Tween modified lethane broth tubes, sterile swab applicators, sterile saline, and 70% isopropyl alcohol. Prior to taking your swab samples, you want to ensure that you put the appropriate letter and number on each tube that correlates with your sample. All the samples should be labeled prior to taking the sample, and you should always turn your swab sheet in with your samples. The first step in the swabbing would be to aseptically remove the sterile swab from its plastic wrapper. Moisten the swab in the sterile saline, and then holding the swab at about a 30-degree angle, rub your swab site slowly to get approximately a 25 square centimeter area. This is equivalent to about 2 inches. This should be repeated 3 times and reverse your stroke direction each time. Once the sample has been taken, aseptically break off the tip of the swab into the recovery fluid, or the TMLB tube. Once all your swabs are complete, they can be turned in directly to the microlab if there is a technician available to test them at that time. If no one is available, the swab should be placed in the refrigerator outside the microbiology lab for the York Road samples. For Beaver Court samples, those swabs should be placed in the refrigerator located inside the pressing team room. Do's and don'ts for swabbing. Do ensure your swab tubes are not expired prior to taking them from the supply area. Always wear new gloves and sanitize prior to use. Moisten your swab in sterile saline prior to swabbing, and always swab approximately 25 square centimeters, or about 2 inches. In some cases, there might not be that large of an area to swab, so get as much surface area as possible. If by chance you accidentally touch your swab on something other than your sample spot, throw that swab away and get a new one. Don't use expired sample tubes. Don't wear old dirty gloves when performing swabs. Don't swab with a dry swab. Always be sure to moisten your swab prior to use. Don't take samples with a swab that might have touched an area other than your sample site.